Why don't we move on to a singer-songwriter who I think I'm a little bit higher on than Little Dragon. Actually, I know I'm a lot higher on than Imagine Dragon or Little Dragon. Waxahatchee with her fifth album, St. Cloud, follow up to 2017's Out in the Storm. Did we review that one? I don't remember.
I think we talked on that. She had a short EP in 2018 as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely mentioned those. I don't remember if I listened to the 2017 album, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, in some regard, sure. But that's kind of what happens with indie artists. You talk about them, and then you wait for them to do new things. You talk about them again. They kind of fade away. But in this case, obviously, a lot to talk about because this is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting because if you know Waxahatchee or know any of her former stuff, especially like her debut album, Cerulean Salt, or the American Weekend. Sorry, I think American Weekend was actually the debut album, and then Cerulean Salt was the follow up. Those albums rest on the strength of her songwriting, this like lo-fi, very like stark sounding production, and pretty simple, but like cutting, like guitar work and drum production. It's very cold, I would say. You know, Waxahatchee's introspective, and she's like tearing herself apart in a lot of ways. And Out in the Storm, a little bit more expansive, got really good critical reviews, but kind of in the same line where it's still kind of like introspective, a bit depressing, kind of looking at what's going on with Katie Crutchfield, who is Waxahatchee. What's so exciting about St. Cloud is it feels like such a change in direction, and this album is incredibly warm. Even if you look at the cover of Out in the Storm and then this cover, the colors in Out in the Storm are gray, mm-hmm. It's like muted bluish kind of color, and it's just very much like, you know, like an old black and white movie. Whereas this is so vibrant. You know, she's on top of this Ford truck in this bright blue dress with the I don't know, what's that, roses in the back, and
I think so, yeah.
Just really
getting her like, OG Lana Del Rey on.
Yeah, for real. Very Lana Del Rey vibes on that cover. And the whole album just feels very warm, and it really blends that folky indie rock sensibility that Waxahatchee usually has with, like you've mentioned, Americana a couple times. That's kind of the key word for this. I think there's that like Americana, almost like singer-songwriter country vibe to this, and I think I think she pulled it off beautifully on St. Cloud. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Like I said, I didn't really remember much about her past work that I'd heard, but in this case, I think St. Cloud's really special because it leaves an impression on you in a relatively short amount of time without being too complicated. You kind of said this, like it's simple chords, it's simple acoustic guitar work, and it's just, you know, cutting lyrics, and it's just really personal, bare bones music. Mm-hmm. And when that much personality can shine with relatively simple accoutrements around it, I think that, you know, that just makes for special music, especially in indie rock, where sometimes it can get a little, you know, kind of a little softly spoken. So it reminds me of what I like about Soccer Mommy as well. Yeah, just really rich vocals that really just shine. So it's a really easy to listen to, but if you listen closer, you hear that Katie's talking about becoming sober over the past few years, and perhaps the stark change in imagery on the album covers reflects this kind of rebirth, regrowth for her. Just guessing, but maybe that has something to do with it. Yeah, so I really like the the guitars on Was It War, and then I thought Fire, one of the more introspective songs. The drums really awesome there. So yeah, overall it's really great.
Yeah, and you talked about that, the simpleness in her songwriting. I think she does a really good job of creating these really catchy, almost kind of like spin you around type choruses and verses, and you know, kind of mixing that with these like layered guitar sounds. There's a lot of tracks where there's like this twangy, like Stratocaster sound, and then you have the acoustic guitars kind of underneath, kind of plucking along to it. and it just sounds really beautiful. Organs are pretty heavily used on this album to kind of give that like livelier vibe. And I was just really impressed because you think about how artists so often try to change directions, and in a second we're going to be talking about artists who necessarily haven't changed directions maybe enough to really expand upon their style and their sound. But Waxahatchee almost seems to have used her becoming sober as a way to propel herself into a new lane in her music while still holding true to what it means to be her as a singer songwriter, with these very concise but cutting lyrics, and introspective lyrics. And there seems to be an optimism to this album that I think just feels like Waxahatchee unlocked something for herself. I think Ruby Falls is a track that really stands out to me, as well as The Eye. Those both feel like that like blend of old school Waxahatchee with some more this like optimism. But yeah, I think this is probably one of my favorite albums of the year. Definitely up there with the Weekend After Hours from last week, which I'm still bumping quite often.
Yeah.
And I heard the producer for this, Brad Cook, worked a lot with Bon Iver, and I think that makes a lot of sense because I hear a lot of like the newer Bon Iver production kind of throughout this, and almost kind of like a Jenny Lewis vibe to this as well from
Sure.
last year's On the Line. So there's just so much in this. I feel like I'm gonna have to listen 3 or 4 more times to really dissect all my thoughts, but really impressive showing, and a 5th album. I can't believe she's been around that long, but go back and listen to her other work if you got some time.
Yeah, I think she's probably one of the more premier artists on her label. She's on Merge Records, which is one of those bigger indie labels like Matador. Mm-hmm. I was just looking at the roster they have, and I mean they have Connor Oberst, Destroyer, X Hex, and a lot of other acts, but a lot of them I don't recognize. So I think I was actually kind of surprised that she was still on one of the indie labels, because I feel like she's kind of been a known quantity for a while. But that's kind of cool still.
Connor Oberst, Bright Eyes might be making a comeback here soon. They're supposed to be. I think they announced something like that. So we'll might be reviewing them.
We need more content.
Give us the content.